Hi, welcome to my tutorial on MvM. My name is CommonCold and I am here to teach you the basics in the man vs. machine game mode in the game Team Fortress 2. Unlike the casual experience of Team Fortress 2, man vs. machine is often considered a lot more formulaic and requires quite a bit more teamwork than you might expect. Paying attention to your teammates and how you can play around them is an important element to the game as a whole. Regardless, for now, I'm only going to be going over the basics, and depending on how well received this video is, I may make another video in the future detailing some more advanced strategies. Scout is one of the most important classes in MvM. His high base movement speed and his ability to gain overheal on money collection mean that he is the best candidate for a money collection class. Not only that, but Scout is able to make robots focus on him rather than his teammates, known as taking aggro. In general, Scout's job is rather simple: collect money. For your loadout, you can use any combination of the following items: the scattergun, the shortstop, the soda popper, Mad Milk, Fan of War, and the Sandman. Your choice of primary doesn't matter all too much if you're playing Money Scout, as you're going to be focusing a lot more on your Mad Milk and your resistances comparatively to your damage. Paying attention to which resistances you get for each round can be important in more advanced missions, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. The point of the Fan of War, or the Sandman, is to be able to mark enemies for death, which means that all damage they take will be considered mini-crits. While Soldier is not as good as Demo Man without a decent amount of starting money, he does have his uses in later rounds, and missions with high starting money values. With Rocket Specialist, Soldier can stun larger or faster bots for a very long time and do good damage to large groups of bots. With his banners, he can provide team buffs for almost the entirety of a wave and make certain missions much easier. It's important that you're very careful about Pyro robots, however, as reflected rockets will have all of the damage buffs you had and be mini-crits, usually being instant death for any of your teammates. Soldier has quite an array of items at his disposal, which are the following: the Rocket Launcher, the Original, Beggar's Bazooka, the Cow Mangler 5000, the Buff Banner, Battalion's Backup, the Escape Plan, and the Disciplinary Action. While playing Soldier, you should primarily focus your upgrades on your Rocket Launcher, keeping note to grab a single point of Rocket Specialist in order to be able to spam from long distances and keep yourself out of harm's way. Do note that any points of Rocket Specialist past the first one do absolutely nothing, so do not get any more than 1 point of it. Pyro is really good for two things, as a lot of MvM players know: large groups of small, low-damage bots, and tanks. The character is relatively simple, being able to hold down attack and their forward key and look around, and things die. Air blasts and reflections can be nice, although shouldn't be focused on primarily as an aspect of Pyro. Pyro's loadout doesn't really help their team all that much, but having the wrong items can be detrimental to their own effectiveness. Here are the items I recommend using: the Flamethrower, the Phlogistinator, the Scorch Shot, the Man Melter, the Gas Passer, the Power Jack, and the Neon Annihilator or Home Wrecker. Pyros benefit the most from being up close and doing high damage, so upgrading resistances and movement speed along with your Flamethrower is key. If you don't have a medic, and even if you do have one, having health on kill will make surviving a lot easier, especially against larger groups of bots. Demo is one of the best damage classes in MvM. With his high burst damage from stickies and more consistent damage from his primary, Demo rivals Heavy as the highest DPS class. One of Demo's main jobs is to deal with Uber medics, who upon either their patient or themselves taking damage, will use Uber, making them completely invincible for a short amount of time. Stickies placed around the area where Uber medics spawn can instantly take out large groups of them, making their team's job much easier. Demos using the Scottish Resistance can also take out Uber bots in a single detonation of stickies. Demo's loadout is relatively restricted if you don't want to play Demo Knight, but this is what's considered good otherwise. The grenade launcher, Alibaba's wee booties, the loose cannon, the sticky bomb launcher, the Scottish resistance, the charge and targe, the bottle, the Islander, and the half Zatuichi. Demo should never split their upgrades between primaries and secondaries. If you're mainly playing with stickies, upgrade your sticky bomb launcher. If you're playing Hybrid Knight, upgrade your primary and your melee. While I wouldn't recommend Demo Knight for some more inexperienced players, hopefully I'll be able to cover it in a future video. Heavy is the primary DPS and tank of MvM. Despite his low movement speed and only nominal health increase compared to other classes, his access to items like the Brass Beast, the Delocos Bar, and the Sandwich make him much more formidable. Heavy almost always needs a dispenser nearby to replenish his ammo stock, but is able to output the highest damage of any class in MvM. That being said, all of Heavy's miniguns have a 75% damage reduction versus tanks, so Heavies typically should not focus tanks unless there are no other bots around. Heavy has quite a few choices when it comes to a loadout. You can use the minigun, the Brass Beast, the Sandwich, the Second Banana, the Delocos Bar, the Gloves of Running Urgently, or the Killing Gloves of Boxing. For Heavy, splitting upgrades between your minigun and resistances is important for being a valuable tank for your team. Typically, projectile penetration is not very effective past the first point, and knockback rage supposedly does nothing past the first point. Not only that, but knockback rage halves your damage while active, so that's something to keep in mind. While it may be a nice bit of crowd control, it may not be worth it in high-stress situations. Engineer is the most important class in MvM. Having good building placement and management can be the difference between winning and losing. Not only does Engineer play a supportive role with his dispenser and teleporters, his turret can effectively act as a stationary heavy, doing lots of damage and acting as a block for bots. The auto-aim that the turret has can also allow it to dispatch difficult-to-hit enemies such as scouts. Making sure that sentry busters don't detonate near your team is also a very valuable skill. Engineer has a rather small arsenal to work with when it comes to MvM, most of which having very niche uses. You have the Shotgun, the Rescue Ranger, the Widowmaker, the Wrangler, the Short Circuit, the Wrench, and the Southern Hospitality. Typically, you only want to use the Shotgun or the Widowmaker against tanks, and the Short Circuit if your team is having trouble with rapid-fire Uber bots. Your first upgrades as Engineer should always be dispenser range and building health. Both of these things ensure your building survival and your team's survival. Having a point or two of metal capacity can make replacing destroyed buildings much easier and faster. Wrench swing speed also achieves the same effect. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you need your buildings at max level quickly, using building upgrade canteens can save your bacon. Try to keep at least one at all times. Despite what many players may tell you, Medic is not a necessary class in MvM. That being said, it can still be nice to have one for overhealing, free crits, and a projectile shield. While Resurrection can save certain pushes, Medics often make the mistake of resurrecting teams in the middle of firefights, getting both the Medic and the Resurrectee killed. However, if Uber is active while you're attempting to resurrect a teammate, the rate at which you resurrect is increased by a significant amount. While Medic has a few options for his loadout, the following are considered the best: Crusader's Crossbow, the Overdose, Crit Scream, and the Uber Saw. Medic's main job is to keep people alive, rather than reviving them from the dead. Using your shield to protect your team from a giant crits rapid-fire soldier can be very satisfying. Critsing high-damage teammates such as the Heavy or the Demo against large groups of bots or tanks is also very nice. Your main upgrade should be on your Medigun and consist of Projectile Shield, Overheal Expert, Healing Mastery, and Canteen Specialist. After that, grabbing a few resistance upgrades to keep yourself alive in more intense situations is something I find to be useful. However, you should typically be keeping yourself out of danger and let your team do the dirty work. I find that using Uber Canteens to apply to a teammate when your projectile shield isn't up is a very nice way to prevent a bot from getting through and destroying your entire team. Sniper is in the same vein of high damage classes as Demo and Heavy, and is able to take out large groups of bots with relative ease. Typically, snipers should play behind the rest of their team on high ground if possible, and try to pick off high priority targets, such as Uber medics, or do damage to other Uber bots. Sniper mostly benefits from his primary weapon, but that doesn't mean there isn't options for his other slots as well. You have the Hitman's Heatmaker, the Machina, Sydney's Sleeper, Cleaner's Carbine, Girardi, Cozy Camper, and the Bushwhacker. As far as upgrades go, Explosive Headshot and Reload Speed are your friend. The combination of these two upgrades will allow you to deal as much, if not more damage than a Heavy or Demo. Since Sniper should be playing behind his team in relative safety, resistance upgrades should not be necessary, although grabbing a few bullet resistances to help against enemy snipers can be useful. Upgrading the recharge rate on Girardi can make Sniper a more supportive type, allowing his team to deal mini crits to groups of bots, similar to Soldier's buff banner. Spy has a very similar job to Sniper, taking out high priority targets. Using the Sapper to disable Uber medics or slow down a Super Scout can be extremely useful for the entire team. Being able to backstab giant quick fix medics or Fists of Steel heavies is also a part of Spy's repertoire. That being said, Spy is still a very squishy target, and will likely die very easily if they're not extremely careful about disguising and cloaking before and after their target is down. Spy likely has the most diverse set of tools at his disposal, but these are what I found to be the best. Litanze, Diamondback, the Invis Watch, the Dead Ringer, the Knife, the Big Earner, and the Conniver's Kunai. For Spy, upgrading your Sapper can make you a more supportive player class to your team, and upgrading your Knife's attack speed and armor penetration can be quite useful as a damage class. After that, I would recommend upgrading movement speed and general resistances to help you make your daring escapes less daring. Moreover, Uber Canteens can make for an easy way out if things go sour.
Can I use the vlog?
Did he say, can I use the flog?
Oh yeah.
Why is he... This guy's upgrades. You just think, like... When I say... You don't... Like, Medic isn't really that good of a pick in Gear Grinder. People, do people actually, like, listen to the words I say? Do they take heed?
No.
That's exactly why I'm fucking making this video. I hope they know that. Now that I've covered all of that, you should have a very general idea of what an average MvM game should look like. Each MvM game is consistent of 6 different players, playing any of the 9 classes. Obviously, in some situations, having a more diverse team composition will be much more effective, but in order to keep this video short and sweet, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you could always post them in the comments below, or send me a whisper on Twitch. I also go live on Twitch almost every single day at twitch.tv/CommonCold, and would be happy to answer any questions you may have. And besides that, I hope to see you all next time. Take care.